Gaza War Day 314. What's up, John?
314. Thank you for
Yeah.
having me on your program.
Thank you for joining us here and for this report, and thank you for your resistance report.
Yeah,
Uh,
what'd you
and,
think?
and I mean, yeah, I mean, the fact the way you open with this is all just since the last time you saw me, and then you have all these incredible.
Yeah, it really hits home, hey?
Yeah, and I noticed a lot of like the early day, like a throwback to the early days of walking up to the tank and putting a device on it.
Yeah, that's Rafa. Rafa's
And
like all about the hand delivered. There's
yeah,
more than half of the hand delivereds this whole war is
yeah.
just those dudes.
It's it's just and then
And
you
then
see
they're
them running. So yeah, that's a
and
good
then
run.
all that detail in the rocket. What about all that? Like the guy with the
Yeah,
notebook writing
right.
down like all of these, like it was basically like an exam of this war, right? He
Hmm.
was like, shout out to the
Yeah,
soul of my soul grandfather, to
yeah.
the Wael Datu line, to the Serail Quds guy who like levitated,
Yes, I remember
Basal
him.
Araj, who's like a
The
leftist, like
theorist.
almost
Yeah.
like a, like, and then fighting like a flea, which is Mao. I don't know. It was just like they knew everything about the details of the war, and then also just flexing that the whole that that it's not just an Islamist
No.
movement, right? That they're reflecting on the movement in equal parts as a national struggle. The party affiliation stuff is just, it's all of that. Even in the sniper one in Khan Yunis, where the guy came over and started tying the Serail Quds armband around his
Yeah.
Hamas
Yeah.
armband, and then
Was
he
that the one where
fires.
there's the really prominent shot of him handing the
Yeah,
bullets?
and he's handing
Yeah.
them Israeli bullets.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and it's just,
And that shot, which you were not allowed to show, the
yeah,
other
that
end of
was a
it
really
was
good shot.
pretty spectacular drop. I
Yeah,
mean, wow.
yeah.
Whew.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and
just,
you
and they just
also
do it every
every
single
week.
week,
And you
every
have an
week.
archive of these now. You've got a separate on EI, Electronic Intifada. There's a separate archive of the, I don't know, 100, I
Yeah,
guess,
yeah.
100
A
resistance
hundred of the
reports.
resistance reports, soon to be 101. Another one just got published now. But if you
Okay,
watched the show
perfect.
yesterday, it's this.
It's
But
that
yeah,
one.
so you'll be able to find them. I also organized playlists for our Gaza guests. So going back to
Oh, great.
Rafat and his like
Wow.
beautiful, devastating appearances, and Abu Bakr.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, Dunia, Abu Sita. So a lot of the Gaza live interviews, which I think are just such a great time capsule.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's an October 7th, like, I forget what I called it, lies, hoaxes, and cover ups, just all the garbage
Hmm.
of October 7th that Ali and David Sheen and Asa have done such a good job covering. So yeah, it just made it a little neater. We've made like something like 550 videos.
Wow.
So this would be make it a little easier to find some of these things that are, part of the way that I cover this war is that I'm trying to create like the first draft, or the like,
Yeah.
I'm trying to create the archive. And that's why I've really stressed that this is everything since you last saw me, because I'm not reorganizing any of them, even though there's like real every week there's something
Yeah.
where I wish like I should just show this one from a couple weeks ago to remind people. Like did you see this new food trend now that they're doing that started with
The
the Tel El
pizza, the
Hawa
triangle
guys?
pizza. Yeah, I saw it.
So
And
those
then the
Tel El
fruit.
Hawa guys
Yeah.
we're like, we're so bored. The army's been invaded for 3 hours and we've already hit four of their tanks and we're bored. And then that was the first time that we know that there's runners that pick up the videos, but now we know for sure there's runners that pick up the videos. And the runner who comes to pick up the video,
Has a
he
slice of
brings them
pizza.
desserts. And yeah, and now it's pizza after the other one. And then there was fruit from the Tela Sultan
Yeah.
made in a triangle shape. They're just having
Yeah.
it's just remarkable. Just obviously, just all the examples that we've been talking about are just, they're totally plugged into what's going on. This
Yeah.
whole like Sinwar's hiding in a hole surrounded by
Well,
prisoners, like
sounds
whatever
like you've
garbage that you hear or
Seymour Hirsch. Did I?
but
I
you
think
hear it.
I don't
You,
even read them. I just send them to you
yeah,
without
I
reading
don't
them.
read
But
them anymore
you don't
either.
read them either. Joe reads them. So every once in a while, Joe Emmersberger writes me back, and he's like, "Don't worry,
Okay, good.
you didn't miss anything."
Yeah,
I
no,
did
that stuff
skim. I
it
skimmed
leaks
the
into the
last
New
one.
York Times. Like they talk like that in the New York Times. We don't. Nobody knows where Sinwar is. He's apparently surrounded by
Yeah,
prisoners.
here's Sinwar. The assassination of Haniyeh eliminated. I mean, here's Sinwar. Here's Hirsch. The assassination of Haniyeh eliminated a second key official of Hamas after an Israeli bombing strike last month killed Mohammed Daif. Oh,
Okay,
thank you, Hirsch.
yeah, confirming something nobody knows.
Nobody knows, and that Hamas has said again,
Yeah,
Daif
they
is
did.
alive
They said
again.
this week that again.
The remaining senior leader, Yahya Sinwar, is living, perhaps on the run somewhere in Hamas's vast underground tunnel system. On the run.
Yeah,
Uh,
and they went back into Khan Yunis for the third time this week. It's just, it's like it's a joke.
so, in terms of Gaza, since your report, which was what, yesterday morning,
Yesterday morning.
there's been a new massacre in Jabalia.
Yeah,
I saw major, not as big as the Fajr massacre, which is our new standard, I guess.
that was so
Um,
brutal last weekend.
yeah. There's a lot of mortars, and I think there's an I don't know if I've seen a new red triangle video, but there's a lot of mortar and rocket videos that I've
There
seen
was a
over the
couple
past.
today. Israel
Yeah.
Quds video firing RPGs at tanks, and one of them was apparently disabled the tank, which is surprising because the single charge RPGs are thought to not work on
Mm.
the heavier armor. But we saw it
Uh,
getting towed, and so these tanks just keep getting towed. And apparently that they have a 1-to-1 uh like what's it called, like mechanic to field hours. 1 hour for every
1 hour in the
driving is
field,
one
you get one
hour
hour of maintenance. I
of
think it's probably
maintenance.
more with planes.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
it
the
probably is.
plane
But the
main, the,
tanks break all the time themselves, even when they're not being blasted by
mhm,
indigenous made weapons. That was the other thing this week, was that just so many examples of unexploded ordnance and how it can be reused. We saw it be used in a barrel bomb, which is where you basically just fill it up, right? Like
yeah.
almost half of the weight of the bombs that are dropped from the sky are basically TNT, are the explosive. So when they drop a 2,000-pound bomb, you're talking about almost 1,000 pounds of explosives, and you put that all in one barrel. Or we saw it in Khan Yunis; they just put it into a paint can, um, and blew up 7 soldiers, and
Yeah.
none of them were claimed. Only one soldier was claimed dead in this entire week.
I
It's
mean,
just not true.
this is something that I've been thinking about as a war of attrition. Abu Obeida. Oh, we should mention Abu Obeida's clarified a little bit more about the incident where a guard who's guarding one of the hostages killed one of the hostages. Abu Obeida said that it was his children who were killed in an airstrike he heard, and he killed his hostage. It's probably even more to the story. It's probably,
Yeah,
you know,
he said specifically the massacre. So I
mm,
wonder if he is talking about one of those school shelters. But yeah, one of the guards snapped. I don't know if
yeah.
you want to read the whole statement. It's very unique to have. It's just like interesting that Qassam is immediately.
Well,
I mean,
yeah,
first of all,
because
so
I
many
mean,
prisoners.
the key points were. Do you want to say something? Sorry.
Well, so many prisoners have been killed that you could hide. You don't have to tell the truth to the world from your tunnel
Yeah,
that that one of your guards acted against Islam and against their principles and against their training,
yeah,
uh, but in a human moment
yeah.
of revenge. There's nothing forcing them to do that. I mean, Israel's killed something like, I mean, the number changes, but it's something more than 60, right? That they're gonna exchange back as bodies. You could add another one to that without without doing what Abu Obeida did, which was like totally take responsibility for it. I mean, I guess, and
I
partially
guess
turn it into a psyop and say this might happen again. But
that's what the Israelis think. But yeah, and I mean they did make a poster of, I guess, I don't know if it's the person, it probably
it
is.
is, yeah,
And it says, an
an
unfortunate
unfortunate
incident.
incident.
Your brutality has become an imminent danger to your prisoners. Waqt yon, what is it? Waqt yonafed or something. Your time is running out. Your time is running out. So they made a poster of the guy they killed. I guess that face is enough for, they didn't say who it was, but I imagine Israelis know.
No, must be a soldier.
Just not a ranking, not
It,
like the
it
commander
must be a
of the
soldier.
Gaza
I
division.
don't think.
He looks, yeah, military age is,
I mean, I think that that's probably what we're talking about. We're talking about a Qassam guard, like from their shadow unit, from their
yeah,
actual prisoner guarding units, rather than people that are being held with families, like we saw in the rescue operation in Nusrat, where people are living in family homes. There's a
yeah.
lot of people like that. My guess is that when Abu Ubaid is coming out and speaking, it's because it was somebody within that shadow unit that did it.
There may not be too many with families after Nusayrat, huh? I mean,
Yeah, that would be interesting to know.
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, the whole yeah, the prisoner stuff is just nuts. There's no logistics to hold these people, and
yeah,
the idea that Israel just doesn't care about their people so deeply,
yeah. All the way
um,
through. There's
it makes
another
it hard
thing.
to plan, right? I just think it
Yeah.
would make it hard for Qassam to plan, to understand where people should be, and yeah, I mean, I don't know how many people are above ground. The middle camps, like Dar al Bala, has not been raided. And Nusrat, other than that, has not been attacked. They're the two places that actually haven't been full scale ground invasion into those areas. So it's not, I don't know how many people could be still living with families. Having them live underground is just, it's not it's a logistical problem.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to get documentaries when this war's over talking about how this happened, like how they looked after that many people and how
So,
impossible it is for Israel to find these people, despite the fact that they've destroyed the entire Gaza Strip.
an official in the Ministry of Interior in Gaza said to Al Jazeera, the occupation has intensified attempts to bring down citizens in espionage to gather information on the resistance. Security apparatuses have arrested several individuals involved in collaboration. They're currently under investigation. The occupation is impersonating relief organizations to gather information and blackmail citizens. Several individuals were contacted by the occupation, were threatened with the bombing of their homes and the killing of their families. Security apparatuses are confronting the occupation's intelligence and its methods of recruiting citizens as collaborators. We urge citizens in various areas of the Gaza Strip to be cautious of the occupation's tactics and deceptions. The occupation is impersonating the names of relief organizations to collect information and blackmail citizens in light of the famine.
And
So,
this is the part about everybody being scattered all over Gaza, right? You don't have the neighborhood protections, provisions that would happen in a normal situation where if someone drove in a van and said they were an aid worker, the neighborhood would be able to identify those people. But because there's just such chaos, I mean, that's what happened with the Nusrat raid, right? They basically the way they got in was on a truck that was loaded with mattresses that made it, and they said they were coming from Rafah and they needed to rent a place. And so there's no ability for people to really vet people in the chaos. Whereas under normal circumstances, if you rolled into Nusrat on any given Tuesday, even like the Israelis do, all dressed up as Palestinians, even with legitimate Palestinian IDs, um, security forces would find you, and
that's
people, the citizens, would say like that person's suspicious. And because of the ruination and the people being scattered, there's it's possible to do these things like attempt to insert collaborators with aid workers, which is just Like,
Yeah,
just
I
so
mean,
criminal, right? Like, it's so
it's
criminal
some of the vilest, yeah,
to cast doubt on aid workers in a moment of um,
famine, which
severe
you induced in the first
with
place.
yeah, but
Yeah, there's no rule, there's no norm, there's no law that like they can't violate and get away with. So,
yeah.
the other thing about the only other piece of news about Gaza specifically today is that Mahmoud Abbas apparently is going to Gaza.
On the back of an Israeli tank.
No, he's gonna go as part of nonviolent resistance because that's the only means they have at their disposal. He said we're going to do nonviolent resistance because we don't have any other means at our disposal while there's an actual war going on, including many members of his faction that are participating in
Yeah,
armed struggle
participating every day.
every single day.
Every day the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigades are part of it. And many of them are not his people, right? Like that's part of the thing is that he does not speak for the rank and file like Tanzim fighters of the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigades, which is one of the
He's
reasons why they became the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigades
but like
in the Second Intifada.
when you read his speech, and I didn't watch it or listen or anything, but when you read the text of his speech, he seems really feeble-minded. Like
Oh yeah,
it's
yeah,
another one of these decrepit
yeah.
old
He's 10
generation.
years too old to be doing this.
Yeah. And
Yeah, and today the Gaza Ministry of Health announced that uh, they've got more than 40,000 bodies, dead bodies. Like that's the number that have come into the hospital. Then there's still 10,000 more at least under the rubble, 93,000 injured, 500 schools destroyed, 150,000 buildings. 88% of all commercial and industrial buildings destroyed.
can you imagine a ceasefire now? Can you imagine if tomorrow they're just like, okay, cool, ceasefire, summit successful. Now we're gonna go back to what? Status quo
Well,
pre
Hamas
2023.
talked about that. I wrote it down somewhere here. They addressed that directly um, that they're not messing around. They're still doing this. They still have their same principal positions: the end of the war, withdrawal, return of their people, exchange of prisoners, and reconstruction. Reconstruction, ending the siege, is still on their basic tenets as a non-negotiable.
And they said they're not they had some great language in the sense where they were saying we're not going back to before zero. And
Yeah.
so this all we want to hear is how you're going to implement the July 2nd agreement that we already agreed to.
Right. So just to say to people, that's why Hamas is not in Doha, because Hamas's position is that the goalposts moved since
Yeah.
the mutually agreed upon standards of May, February, and May even, and so that it's up to the other side to go and have negotiations with themselves to figure out what they're willing to accept from the original proposal that Hamas agreed to. So I think that's a perfectly reasonable position.
Of
Talk about
course.
implementation amongst yourselves and then call us, because the Israelis are saying we're not leaving the Philadelphia corridor.
Yeah.
And Hamas said today, we will not accept the
Yeah.
Philadelphia corridor. So it's like those are key. So basically, what happened was Netanyahu sent the chief of Mossad to Rome at the end of last month with a one-page memo that basically changed all of this the understood agreement. What was mutually agreed upon principles were changed. The way that people could go home to the north was supposed to, in the original document, people could go home to the north without checkpoints. Israel added checkpoints to that, which makes a huge difference on people moving back home. And as we know, and as Gazans know, those checkpoints are the place where they get filtered out and taken into the
Kidnapped.
rape and murder camps
Yeah.
in the desert. And they changed. they said we're staying in the Philadelphia corridor. We're not negotiating on the Philadelphia corridor. And they said, this is Israel's memo, said we want veto over the prisoners that are being released, which is code for you're not getting Ahmed Sadat, Marwan Barghouti. They're not getting those guys. And then Israel wants, sorry to laugh, but it's so outrageous. Israel wants the prisoner exchange before anything else.
Yeah.
They want all their people back before they're
Yeah.
going to institute anything.
And then they want to return to war whenever they feel
and then
like.
they want to return to the war. And then they're going to kill the people that get out in the prisoner exchange, which I noticed you noted on Twitter just happened in the West Bank for the second time this week. They killed people that
in Tubas, in Nablus. They're invading Kalkilia as we record.
Yeah.
And Jenin was a bit earlier. But yeah, and their targets in Tubas and Nablus were prisoners that were released in November 2023. And
in targeted hits, death squads.
Like in one case, the fighter was in his house and they pulled the family out of the house, and then they bombed the house, and then they shot up the house, and then they went up in a Jeep and machine gunned the house.
Yeah, in front of the family, in front of his young kids. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know how you make a deal with those people. And I think that's part of what Hamas is saying too about Doha is figure out a system for implementation. Like, who's going to be guaranteeing this? That's something that the Americans and the Egyptians and the Israelis can talk amongst themselves about. They don't need Hamas in the room for that. You figure it out yourself how you're going to make this happen, because the Shalit deal was supposed to end the blockade. The 2014 war was supposed to end the blockade. These are written agreements that were reneged upon by Israel. Israel says their propaganda was that there was a ceasefire on October 6th, right? Like, that's what their Hasbaraists say. There was a ceasefire. There wasn't. There was a violation of the ceasefire by Israel that wasn't adhered to, dating back to the 2014 war. And then the 21 and 22 wars both had parts of their agreement that were just reneged on by the Israelis. So I don't even know, like, the Americans are talking about, Biden said it again, like they're saying that this is the time, right? This is the negotiation that's going to happen, and that they're going to tie it in to try to prevent the Iranian response. So the Americans are looking at the world like, we can solve the problem of Hezbollah in the north. We can solve Gaza. We can solve the Red Sea battle, and we can stop Iran from attacking. And they believe those things are all on the table. But where do you think Israel stands on that? Like, they're not.
Israel wants all of those things without the war in Gaza, and all of those parties have said the only thing that can stop us is ending the war in Gaza. So it's just so, and it's funny because if this is true, and I don't believe that it is, but the propaganda around this is kind of funny, because if you read it a certain way, let's say, they're basically suggesting in their propaganda that the Americans are using the Iranian threat to pressure Israel to agree to the ceasefire. And I'm sure the Israelis, see it that way to some extent, because there's this kind of like, where there's an imminent Iranian threat and we can head it off if we make this deal. And so it's kind of like the Americans are blackmailing Israel with the possibility of Iranian missiles, and instead of using the leverage they actually have, which they're not using, because they've been giving, they announced 20 billion more of this and that. I looked at, by the way, what they're sending. A lot of it is planes. Most of it is planes.
Yeah.
Some of it is shells and missiles, and a little bit of it is trucks. What I was looking for was tanks. But no, as far as I could tell.
Yeah, and it's not till 2029. So that's precisely. So you have a $20 billion arms sale that's going to go through in 2029. that is the most symbolic thing that you could hold back, right? You're actually not taking, these arms shipments that land every day in Israel with shells, with things they need for the battle. Stopping that could, you could say that that would harm Israel's ability to actually defend itself. You could say that. But 2029,
Right.
you could say we'll deal with that 2029 weapons package once you agree to a ceasefire that stops
Right.
a World War III from being a factor. And they don't even have the guts to do that. And it's not even about guts, right? It's actually the opposite. It's like a pre-election
Hmm.
announcement, right? Because all of these weapons manufacturers in Congress can all say, look at what we've achieved, right? They're going to buy 20 billion dollars worth of our jets. And
Yeah. So what is I mean, we talk that's what they're sending in terms of sales and support. But then there's a separate issue about what they've sent in terms of their force posture, which I think you wanted to talk about.
well, yeah, so that this already has been longer than Operation True Promise, when the last time the Iranians responded. And then there's already an aircraft carrier strike group in the area. And then there's one, the Abe Lincoln, is steaming its way. It's accelerating. Every day this week, there was a Pentagon press conference using a different word for accelerate, to get to the region, and it'll get there apparently by this weekend, at the latest early next week. But this is an unprecedented force posture for the US. They're going to have two aircraft carrier strike groups. They're going to have 10 helicopter and fighter jet squadrons. They're going to have 30 US Navy ships. They've got C-17, dozens of C-17 major airlift component. They've got two command and control ships. They've got guided missile submarines with intercontinental ballistic missiles.
That doesn't
And
sound like part of a missile shield.
no, these are, yeah, and it carries 150 Tomahawk cruise missiles. One submarine does, which is apparently somewhere between 3 and 5 times as many as the warships carry. So, and then they've got all the electronic warfare stuff that they're sending. 1/3 of the Navy, 1/3 of the US Navy. They're just going for it. And Iran is, I guess, waiting and letting them get into position, right? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it's just if they can hit one, they can hit a third of the na whole Navy, presumably. So
yeah.
it's just whether yeah, I don't know what they're gonna do. I mean, they say that they're letting the Israelis suffer by making them wait, but of
Oh, I
course,
saw that too. Abdul Malik Al Houthi said that today too, that the waiting is part of the
of the
response.
punishment, yeah, Nasrallah said it in
And
his speech
Nasrallah
that
said
we
it too.
covered.
But
So,
Al Houthi said that they're going to respond for Hodeida. So he wasn't saying, we're going to be part of some, joint opera. He was saying straight up, like, we're responding for the bombing of the port at
yeah,
Hodeida.
yeah,
He also said the Americans bombed on land this week 10 times in Yemen.
yeah. To
That
eight on
doesn't
Hodeida, two on Hajjah and Sana'a.
that doesn't make the news, even
No,
in like the last paragraph of an article about US forces in the region. Like,
nothing.
those
Just
airstrikes on Yemen don't get reported.
bombing Yemen is totally free. It's completely free and without even comment.
That's
And yeah, and like
that's remarkable.
people don't even know why. Like I've talked to people, not like political people or Palestine people, but like lots of people don't know why the Houthis are doing the blockade. They're just like, what does that have something to do with Gaza? Like that's I someone asked me that. They were like, "Oh, you're a Palestine guy. Like, does the Houthi thing have something to do with Gaza?"
See, that's the thing. You're mixing in with civilians right now, and it's dangerous.
Oh my God. So, meanwhile, Iraq, there was an announcement. The poor Iraqi resistance, they have such a hard situation because their government, they have a certain loyalty to the government. And the government says we want time to negotiate. And the Iraqi resistance wants to be and is a support front, but they also want to negotiate. So they've been trying to do these joint operations with Ansar Allah, aka the Houthis from Yemen, and hit Eilat, but they want to hit American bases. And the Americans said they were leaving in 20. They made an announcement a week and a half ago or so, where they said we're going to leave in 2025, like firm. And now today they said we're not leaving. There's no timeline for leaving. And so it's just they're just being, you know, I don't know what to, there's an expression that involves swearing, but they're just being messed around, let's say. Um,
Yeah.
just being completely messed around by the Americans and the negotiations. And that's what I saw in terms of the Doha thing too. Like the Doha thing is just like Iran's promised a response, and maybe the longer we drag this, we have a meeting where Hamas isn't even at, and we just drag it out and say maybe there'll be a ceasefire. So Iran doesn't want to bomb during the talk. They at least want it to fall apart before they bomb. And so they're gonna drag I bet tomorrow they announce that they need another day, and they do this for a while until the Americans are very confident, until the Lincoln gets there and whatever else they want to get there gets there.
Yeah. Yeah. It does. It looks like they need to buy a week. It looks
Yeah.
like.
So every day they'll say, we're so close, we're so close, we're so close.
And yeah. And then what? If they go away, they is that force posture of the US? Is that something
Sustainable.
that they're is that sustainable? Is that
Is
how
that
they're
the
going to
new, is that,
operate?
are those the new parking spots for 1/3 of the Navy? Is that where
Yeah.
they're going to live
Is that
now?
what Israel is now? Israel from an offshore an onshore aircraft carrier to requiring multiple aircraft carriers to
So that
protect
you
it?
can, to protect its ability to take prisoners, starve them, torture them, and rape them and kill them.
Yeah.
That's like the main work that they're doing.
Yeah.
That's the main task of their military.
Not even trying to get their people back, not even trying to get the Americans back. The Americans don't even pretend they're trying to get their citizens back.
Ben Gavir stormed Al Aqsa Mosque again. So just provocations. But
Provocations.
um, but okay. So there's one other question which I wanted to talk to you about, because they're saying like 500. We're looking at like half of Israel's armored vehicles have been somehow damaged, right? Like the infographic that Rafa, Qassam and Rafa sent as a kind of message, open public letter to Nasrallah, where they said, "We've done the job for you. We know you'll finish the job," or whatever.
Yeah.
And
That was awesome, by the way.
and I was confident in July, early July, that the invasion was going to happen in July. And you were less confident. You said, no, I don't think so, because of as Nasrallah said, with what army, Habibi, right?
Yeah.
And so without the armored vehicles, without enough armored vehicles. And so what I'm wondering is, like, it seems like in the division of labor, Ansar Allah is destroying Israel's economy slowly. Um, Hezbollah has destroyed their surveillance system in the north. Is it Qassam's job to destroy their armored vehicles? So they're the hardest job. I mean, they are bearing the hardest brunt of it. But it seems like they might end up destroying Israel's armored vehicle fleet all by themselves.
Yeah, the Israel cannot fight indefinitely and then open another front in Lebanon. It just the math doesn't math.
That's
It's
what I'm
just
that's what I'm wondering, because if they start to really run out, like how are they going to prevent another breakout from Gaza? Are they going to dig a trench? Are they going to be waiting in trenches in the envelope along Highway 10 or whatever the road is there? Like it's there's some
Big
questions
questions,
that are
huge
going to start
questions.
to arise in months, probably not weeks, but like if the rate that we're seeing keeps up, and if it doesn't keep up, again, if they leave their armored vehicles outside the envelope, again, maybe they'll be targeted outside the envelope.
How long will it take to rebuild the envelope under the eyes of a
Yeah.
destroyed, angry Gaza
Yeah.
that has 2,500 minimum unexploded bombs ranging from 250 to 1,000 pounds of TNT in each. And that's how they make all their weapons. That's what's in a Shawaz. That's what's in a guerrilla action device. That's what's in a
Your
Yasin tandem charge 105. That's
your
what's in a
goods
barrel bomb.
your goods are being returned to you.
That's what's in a rocket. It's not like it's marginal stuff that it's the core of their weaponry. And there's more of it by orders of magnitude than there ever has been before. And there's more capacity because there's
They
more
have more
people who
fighters.
know
Yeah,
how, yeah, more
absolutely.
fighters, more manufacturers because they were at their peak in October. So there's all those people that know how to do that work and they
Well,
can immediately get started on it.
I've been thinking about this. I don't know if I've said it because I don't I make up I talk about how I don't talk about Russia Ukraine. But
Yeah.
like one of the things that's irritates me about Russia Ukraine is like British training Ukrainians about how to fight Russians. And it's like the Ukrainians have literally been fighting Russians for 2 years or arguably since 2014. I think they should be training you on how to fight the Russians. And it's
Yeah.
like if you think of the expertise that the Gaza resistance has now, there's nothing like that in the world.
No,
There's
there's not.
nobody who has experience like they have in the world.
No. The combat skill it
Yeah.
takes to remain in an urban fight for that long,
Yeah.
there's nothing even close to it. Under constant threat, constant surveillance, there's no hinterland, there's no ability to rest and recruit, right? Which is what the
Yeah.
Israelis do. So they even for the Israelis, they rotate out. Qassam can't rotate people out.
No, they like you've talked about, like they have people waiting for months with weapon systems that are not being used elsewhere.
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
had
that was
people waiting in
remarkable.
Rafah.
Yeah, that Tel Hawa operation with the video that I showed this week, they said they dug it 8 months ago and they
Yeah.
stayed in those positions, which is actually interesting to talk about because staying in those positions is what is really telling. That's very instructive that they're
Yeah.
not just moving around, harassing and attacking. They're in
Yep.
their combat positions in their neighborhoods. They're not retreating and they're not joining up with other battalions to carry out operations. They're
Yeah.
still fighting like a structured army. And that I just keep saying it like there's no reason to believe they're not doing that. But the sign that you kind of
Except
look
that
for
maybe
is
it's
to
not
see,
humanly possible. That could
well,
be
they're
a
not
reason.
they're not just people in Gaza.
Yeah.
There's a level of this war that if you were to defeat the Qassam brigades would turn into a guerrilla war where
Sure.
people with guns and unexploded ordnance would be running around carrying out operations. So there's nothing like that, even from Qassam. So Qassam's not fighting that way, let alone all the layers down that you go down to what it would be if Israel really did crush Qassam. There would be hundreds of thousands of Palestinians ready to fight who don't fight right now because Qassam is a national army. You don't
Yeah.
just walk up the street because you're mad one day and join the Qassam brigades in Tel
You
Hawa.
train. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so they're not bringing people in. So that entire wellspring of human material hasn't even been touched yet. And the Israelis are exhausted. Their gear is, needs to be fixed for long periods of time.
Yeah. And they crowd fund for equipment and stuff. They're individual soldiers.
Yeah. Yeah, they do. No, they literally do. And the IDF's trying to crack down on that because it's happening so much and it's been happening right since the start. Like on LL flights, they ask random passengers if they can carry on gear on their if they don't have the maximum weight of their bags. So they're smuggling. They're like doing the thing that the first thing the airport people tell you, like, did you pack? Do you know everything that's in this bag? Like, they don't. They don't know what's in the bag because somebody gave them the bag at the airport full of drones, body armor, helmets. And so in that Russia Royal Institute report, the peer-to-peer military report, they said that there was friendly fire deaths related to uniform irregularities because people are just putting helmets or whatever on an LL flight. And so the Israeli military is trying to crack down on this now. There was
They've
an
got a
article in the
lot of,
Jerusalem Post the other day about it to crack down on this smuggling because it's
oh
it's
yeah, such a disciplined organization in general. I'm sure
it's
that's
just
gonna,
incredible.
yeah.
No amount of billions of dollars from your daddy, no number of F-22 squadrons, F-35 squadrons, nuclear powered aircraft carriers. None of it's enough.
So I guess we can close with this statement from Sheikh Naim Qassem, the Deputy Secretary General of Hezbollah. It's a good little statement to end on, I would say, because while it's not the most logical statement, maybe something is lost in translation, but I'll read it to you anyway. Today we're facing three paths. The first path is the continuation of the aggression on Gaza, which necessitates that the confrontation and support fronts continue no matter the cost. Fair enough. The second path is the path of ceasefire. We have repeatedly said that if the ceasefire in Gaza occurs, the support fronts will cease without the need for discussions with the support fronts because they are there to support Gaza. Okay. Also transparent. And I don't think that's going to happen, but it's worth putting out there for Hezbollah. And then the third path is the response to the Israeli aggression of the assassination of the great jihadist leader, martyr Fouad Shukr, and the Iranian response to the assassination of the great leader Haj Ismail Haniyeh. Okay, so you now get the impression that there's these three paths, and if you pick one, you can't go down the other two. But then he says, this response has its own course and plan entirely separate from the previous two paths, meaning that the response will take place.
Mm.
So he's basically saying whether we have a ceasefire or not, we are going to respond to these two assassinations.
Yeah. That file is open, I think is the language that they like to use.
There is no force on earth that can stop them from responding, is
No,
basically what they're saying.
no, no. And
Uh,
I think the Iranians, uh, yeah, I think the Iranians have to as well. That that
yeah.
assassination of Hania was just so provocative to do it at the inauguration, to do it right under the nose of the new, like
Did you
supposed
did you
moderate.
did you see the other things that didn't happen for 500?
No.
Apparently the Americans, there's a story that the Americans went to Tehran and gave the Iranians a list of Mossad agents that were involved in the Haniyeh assassination to try to fend off the Iranian attack. They said, "Look, we'll give you this intelligence on who killed Haniyeh,"
I didn't see
which
that.
I think it's like at this point I'm not the only person writing political fiction at this point. US gives Tehran. Let me just find it and just put it on the screen.
I mean, it's hard sometimes. I don't know if this is tanky group therapy, but it's just sometimes it's hard to know if we're living in a real world. Like the
Yeah.
Israelis dropped cigarettes on Khan Yunis the other day that said
Yes, and they
cigarettes
said
are bad
smoking
for
is
your
yeah.
health.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Cigarettes are bad for your health, but Sinwar is worse for your health. And then they said if you collect 5 of these, you'll get a special prize. So phone this telephone number.
Oh God. So
It's demented.
The National Security Council has denied the story, which
Well,
makes
that's
sense.
happened before, right? Like, remember the um, Mahmoud Mabu, Mohammed Mabu, Mahmoud
The
Mabu
guy who was killed in the hotel,
in the hotel in Doha, the
yeah.
Qassam
Khalid,
commander.
I think it was Khalid Mahmoud. Mahmoud. Who was killed in where? Oh no, it was
in
Mahmoud.
du-
You were right.
Mahmoud
Mahmoud
in
Al
Dubai,
Mabhouh
and
in
they
Dubai.
and then the next day the Dubai police came out and put all the fake
Video.
all the video, yeah, of them looking like playing like tennis players, but also printed all of the passport photos of all of the assassins.
Yeah.
And there was a bunch of Canadian passports for us Canadian audience. Do we have a Canadian audience?
Yeah, it's proportionate. It's
Is it?
proportionate to so the vast majority is American, and then there's the whole Anglosphere. There's a lot of England. There's this honorable mention in Australia and New Zealand,
Yeah.
especially because of the time that it's published. Apparently, a lot of people
Oh.
waking up and listen.
Oh, we're the morning show?
Yeah, we're the morning show for them. Yeah, so and then I guess this is the August 14th was the anniversary of the victory of Hezbollah in 2006 against
Oh, I
Israel.
guess that's right.
Yeah.
I guess they're not celebrating this year. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's worth remembering that that war ended because Israel begged for a ceasefire.
Yeah.
Israel wanted that war to end.
And until they wanted it to end, they didn't want it to end.
Yeah.
So they were constantly wanting to bomb more civilian targets.
Yeah. And then right at the end on this day, if this is the day, this was the day that they saturated South Lebanon in cluster bombs and just rained them down
Yeah.
all over the South. And I was there. I was there really shortly after that. And still, like, it was within weeks, like a few weeks, couple weeks even. It was before September. And they were like hanging from trees in front of people's windows and like inside people's houses in their like bedrooms, and they're just these tiny little, they
Bomblets.
have little ribbons on them so you don't even really know what they are. They make you kind of look like you want to pick them up, and they just saturated. And even the Israelis themselves said that it was monstrous. The like armored brigade commander who issued the order said it was monstrous, just hundreds of thousands of these. Just sick. Israel's sick. It's not even like the element of sickness embedded into these things, these campaigns that they have.
It's hard to fathom.
It's hard to. And then just like the lying last week to carry out that massacre last weekend and then just lie about it and say that they were all Hamas people. And then did you see some of the research on that? Like Rami
Yeah.
Abdu from the European Center for Human Rights is he's publishing, Israel published a piece of paper with all the faces on it, right? And he's like, that's my baker. Like
Yeah.
a bunch of them were killed already, are already dead in previous times. It's like Israel released one of their cards saying that they assassinated a Qassam commander, and the guy's face on the card was an Egyptian journalist. And Egyptian television had him on the air being like, "Oh, congratulations on your
On being a
assassination."
dead
And
Hamas
he was
commander.
like a semi-famous journalist, like a journalist who was like the head of the journalist syndicate. He on TV. He wasn't like some unknown guy. It's just the lowest form of lying while carrying out these sick attacks that are just, I don't know. Sometimes some days it's hard to listen to the news. I hope that's why some people listen to our show as a morning show, because we try to bring you the news without the like,
The weight of having to be
yeah,
lied
hear
to.
the screen and hear the screaming kids. And That's the only way the Western media reports the story. The only time it's going to be about a Palestinian, it starts with wailing
Did you
before the
see
story even starts.
Martyrs of Gaza? They're shutting down. They said that we're not going to do anymore. It's a Twitter account that we're kind of humanizing victims in Gaza, and they were like, "There's no point." And it's true. It's like there's always been this. We've always kind of mocked the Western media for always looking for victims, Palestinian victims, and human stories, but they're not even interested in that either anymore.
No. I
So,
mean, that's really politically going to upend a lot of political ideologies. Like a lot of generations of kind of journalists said, like
mhm.
if people knew, this would never, if people knew how bad war is, it would never happen. All we have
Yeah,
to do is show them.
yeah,
That's not true. Now you can't open up media without seeing it.
yeah. And
And
if
even
you
when it's
report
in,
it, yeah, you're reporting resistance operations. Every once in a while, I'll retweet something about the humanitarian situation, or I'll say something about it, and I still get tons. I mean, maybe they're just AI or whatever, but I still get people saying, "Well, what did you expect? You shouldn't have gone to war then." Just absolutely like inhuman. Like
disgusting
there's,
people. Who
yeah,
are those people, and where are their families around the table, and
yeah.
and what are they going to be like when this is over?
I guess yeah. Somehow there's some kind of pleasure in it for a certain kind of psychology, and that's what people like us can't even really contend with. We can't even really understand it. So we keep saying things like, "I don't understand what they're
Yeah,
doing."
I don't understand.
We just
We
keep
shake
having
our
these
heads.
mantras like, "I don't know what they're doing." Well, on that happy note, I guess
Yeah.
we'll call it a night.
Stay with it though, people. Don't can't give up.
No, no,
This is
no.
this these this is we're watching the end of Israel.
Yeah.
This trajectory without a dramatic change.
Yeah, and that a dramatic change is not like a cargo plane full of weapons or a 20 billion dollar arms package. It's totally there is nothing on the horizon. We're talking about an unknown unknown is the only thing that can save Israel at this point. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
hang
mean,
in there.
yeah. Hang in there, guys.
We'll see you in the next one.